this can scale all the way up to something much bigger. You could build Spotify with Bitcoin on top of our API. And that's the kind of thing we're trying to convey to people, is that really it's your imagination is where you can take this. Finally, you could do Uber with Bitcoin, or you could do TaskRabbit with Bitcoin, or you could do Fiverr. All of these platforms that exist around peer-to-peer transactions that are relatively small and need final settlement and address global audiences in a global market. All of those are now open season, in our opinion.
Welcome to the Business Bitcoinization Show, the show dedicated to helping you enrich your life and grow your business with Bitcoin, the hardest money on planet Earth. I'm your host, Josh Friedeman, and our guest today is Ben Cousins, who's the Chief Strategy Officer at Zebedee, a highly innovative fintech built on top of Bitcoin's Lightning Network. Now, you may have heard of Zebedee before, maybe not. You'll find out today that they've been behind a lot of developments in the Bitcoin ecosystem, and I think you'll catch a vision for how they could potentially help your business in this interview today. Of course, before we get to our interview, we have this week's Bitcoin Meetup Spotlight, and this week we're going to Eugene, Oregon. The Eugene Bitcoiners Meetup is a place for Bitcoiners to meet, learn, and discuss their passion for Bitcoin. They meet at 6:30 on the first Thursday of every month at Wildcraft Cider Works. They discuss all aspects of the Bitcoin ecosystem with all levels of experience welcome to learn, grow, and network. Oh, and you might get shamed if you come hyping up your dog coins, so beware. You can find them on Twitter at Eugene Bitcoin. And if you don't happen to be in Oregon but want to find a Bitcoin meetup near you, I encourage you to download the Oshi app, where you'll be able to do just that. You can find a link for Oshi down in the show notes. Now, we're going to get to our interview with Ben right after this. There are dozens of places where you can buy Bitcoin. So where do you go? Well, since the beginning, I've gone to Swan. Swan Bitcoin offers ways for you to make instant buys or to dollar cost average into Bitcoin. And if you're looking to purchase $100,000 or more over time, Swan Private gives you a one-on-one rep who can help you navigate any questions you might have. Maybe you're a business owner looking to give your employees a consistent Bitcoin bonus. If so, Swan's Bitcoin Benefit Plan is your answer. In fact, I can't think of a lot of good reasons not to at least check out Swan. So, to get started, go to swan.com/bizbit. And if you're on the fence about Bitcoin, just trying to learn more, you can download your free copy of Inventing Bitcoin from Swan. People who don't know about Swan are buying this excellent overview of Bitcoin on Amazon right now. But you know about Swan. So go to swan.com/bizbit. Then there's River Financial. River lets you dollar cost average as well and charges 0 fees when you do. But there's something else that makes River stand out to me even more: cash flow. If you like your money making money, River's hosted Bitcoin mining service might be just what you're looking for. Through River, you can buy new Bitcoin mining hardware that they'll then run for you. Or you can select a miner that's already up and running and start receiving Bitcoin in as little as 5 days. This is a great option to grow your personal Bitcoin stack, but it can also be part of your IRA or business account. Go to bizbitshow.com/river to get $100 in Bitcoin for every miner you purchase through River. That's bizbitshow.com/river. And last but certainly not least, we have Oshi. If you're looking for a risk-free way to take Bitcoin for a test drive in your business, Oshi is for you. Oshi lets you give your customers cash back in Bitcoin using the Bitcoin Lightning Network. Merchants love the Lightning Network because it provides instant payment settlement and makes chargebacks a thing of the past. It's great for you, but what's in it for the customer? Oshi changes this. With Oshi, you can set up promotions to incentivize customers to pay in Bitcoin. There are 0 processing fees, and you only pay the 2.5% platform fee when customers actually make purchases. To see if Oshi's right for you, go to oshi.team/bizbit. Once again, that's oshi.team/bizbit. All those links will be down in the show notes. And now, on to today's interview. Ben, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Josh. Thank you for having me.
So I like to start off every single interview with a few questions that help us to get to know you a little bit better and give us some insight for our own lives. So you ready for these?
I think so.
When and how did you first learn about Bitcoin?
I'm class of 2015. It was my Argentinian flatmate who told me about it.
And out of curiosity, from there, was it just you caught on to Bitcoin, you understood it, and you were good to go? Or did it take a while for you to catch the vision of what Bitcoin was?
It wasn't slow, but it wasn't quick. I had deep skepticism. It was in the evening, and it was after work. And the first thing he told me about, like, internet money or computer backed money, I was just like, no way, that gets hacked in an instant. Like, what are you doing? But he was very insistent, and I did want to. I'm curious as a person, so I wasn't like, oh, don't show me, I'm a nerd. So I was like, let's go. Let's go have a look at it. And so we got on my laptop, and I bought £10 worth of Bitcoin at the time, and sent it to a blockchain.info wallet. And it was when I saw an address and a transaction ID, I realized it was cryptography. And I'm of the generation that was very into music piracy and knew about encryption to mask your data. And I thought, okay, well, I know that works, so I'll look into this more. So I had I don't know, I was primed, I think, from my background to be open-minded to it.
What's an insight or fact about Bitcoin that you wish everyone understood?
That something that is for everyone and no one simultaneously is immensely powerful. It's usually those kind of mediums, be they money or information or any kind of thing, have tended to be great unifiers for the human race.
What's the Bitcoin resource that you most recommend to other people?
That is a question that I've confronted recently, trying to share with more people. I used to, so I've always recommended a more technical path, i.e. download an app and try it versus try and conceptually understand it. You can conceptually understand it later with time. However, I dug out an old email of some resources I looked at from back in the day, and I stumbled upon the old Reason YouTube video about the history of crypto cypherpunks and like how long they were trying to create digital money for. And I think it's like a 40-minute clip or something. But as far as like hey, watch this documentary sometime when you're bored goes, I actually think that one is a pretty good one for hugely demystifying the idea that this just came out of nowhere one day. Like someone just woke up like, oh, I'm going to invent internet money. I think when people see that it was actually a 40, 50 year long research undertaking by cryptographers, you start to understand a lot more. There's a lot more credibility to it than I think is prescribed by the media.
Beyond Bitcoin, what is a resource, tool, or an idea that's been helpful to you and your work at Zebedee recently?
I have to say Nostr, don't I? I have to, because it's just so cool and it popped out of Zebedee.
How has it been helpful to you? Is it just a matter of being able to create a new, essentially open source community, or are there other aspects that have been valuable to you?
I think of the value of it as being somewhat more intangible. So when fiatjaf first put this out there, I think a very small handful of us at Zebedee were amongst the first dozen or so people mucking about there, alongside Will, who's gone on to do Damus. I don't think he even knows he was interacting with me because I was using a NIM. But it was like, oh, this is very cool from a playing with cryptography, things that you can do with cryptography. Like it was very cool from that perspective. We had no opinion whatsoever that it would necessarily go anywhere, pick up traction, or do anything. I think where it shines is in displaying to the wider world and internet that you don't need a blockchain for all things crypto. And actually, when you do use public and private keys in ways that can at least be vaguely intuitive, but more fundamentally matched to a use case with proven demand out there in the world, like social networking, that you can actually achieve a massive amount very quickly. I think that Nostr has gone from 0 to about 2 million users in roughly 4 or 5 months, post Jack Dorsey drawing attention to it. Before that, there was nothing going on. But that really, that catalyzing moment, we were at first watching it like, well, does it sustain? And now it's sustaining. I think people are starting to appreciate how deep the versatility of Nostr actually goes. And I, all credit to fiatjaf for working this out, or maybe for creating something so deceptively simple. But it's very, it's very promising stuff. And I love that, because in my previous career, I worked with a lot of startups, and the number of times I saw attempts to build Web3 social networks, blockchain-backed social networks, and the failure of those starting the social network to grasp that, like, no one cares. Like, you don't sell a social network on technology. I can't sell you on Facebook because it uses really high grade bare metal servers, in a warehouse. You just don't care. But if I tell you, you can chat to your friends, and maybe you can, if you're dating, you can meet someone, like all of these kind of real life utilities, they come into it. Same with Twitter, you can get information. All of these social networks revolve around humans communicating with one another in appealing ways, whether it's having fun or enraging each other or dividing each other. Who knows? Like the good and the bad, right? It's all there, but none of it has anything to do with the underlying technology. No one's like, it's so cool that this post I just did has 7 confirmations on this chain. Like no one does that. Like no one cares. So I like seeing things that demonstrate that quite clearly. And I think Nostr is a very good demonstration of that.
Now we have our final arbitrary but insightful question, and it's this. As a general life principle, is it better to ask why or why not?
Why? I've gone off that. I've just decided that on the spur of the moment. But I think if the first humans didn't go, why, then we probably wouldn't have a lot of like philosophy, science, and technology. If they'd just gone like, why not just accept it? Sand is sand, or like sky is blue. Then we probably might not have like invented spaceships.
I appreciate that answer. I think there's a lot to that. So Ben, we're here today to talk about Zebedee. And, previously we have talked with Santos Hernandez about Emerald Eye's app, but because Santos works at Zebedee as well, we talked about Zebedee a bit. So I think longtime listeners, or at least people who've been listening in 2023, will have heard about Zebedee to some degree already. But I want to talk with you today about some ways that business owners can be thinking about using it for their businesses. I'll say that previously I had frequently thought of Zebedee as a service for gaming companies and gamers, and I think that's significantly what it was. But to your point earlier about Nostr, sometimes there is a deceptively simple idea that has many additional applications. So hopefully you can share with us today about what those applications are. But just to start off, could you share with us a little bit about Zebedee and what you guys are doing?
Yeah, for sure. We see ourselves as a next-gen fintech. So we're basically enabling all means of payments in the environments that we now interact with, which is primarily online. So we like to say, in marketing speak, we make money move at the speed of the internet. But there's a lot of truth to that. We're moving value onto Lightning Network powered rails, and we're then zipping it around the world instantaneously for near zero fees. And we can do that, so quickly and at such small values that we can enable streaming payments. We can enable micro rewards in any kind of digital media and entertainment activity. We started out, concentrating heavily on games because that was a market where we saw proven demand for micro transactions in the fiat world. We feel like we have generated enough interest, awareness, and understanding, let's put it that way, within that segment to feel confident making this service available to all developers. And that's what we've obviously just announced. I think it was yesterday. But we know we've now got a set of infrastructure that's processing tens of millions of Lightning transactions all the time. We've got 200 developers building on the platform. We feel confident that now we can say, hey, if you have an idea and you think it's cool and you can think of a cool use case for Lightning, why don't you come and try out the API? It's free. Maybe you'll innovate and let's build the future together.
So could you share a little bit more about the API and what some of those different levels are? Because one great thing is that I saw that there is and will remain to be a free level, which is great for people who are just kind of trying to test the waters. But talk to us about your offerings, the ones that you announced yesterday.
Yeah, so for folks who might not have looked at Zebedee from a technical perspective and saw us as the kind of Bitcoin games company, we are providing fully managed Lightning Network services. So you don't need to, given this is a Bitcoin podcast, I think I can go into a bit more technical detail, but you don't need to think about channel management, liquidity, looping out. All of that is just abstracted away, and you're presented with something which is designed to let you focus on the UX and UI of whatever experience you're trying to deliver. Like get the complicated part out of the way. And why do I say that? I say that because we've anecdotally noticed this, but I've also seen Bitcoiners argue this. When anything fundamental or revolutionary works, it just gets out the way and it's not front and center. When you dial into when you open your browser, when you use the internet today, it doesn't go like, ta-da, you're in the internet. Like, it's like, it's just get it out of the way, right? You've got an information stream, give it to me. Same with if I'm using a podcasting app like Fountain, which rewards me in Bitcoin or lets me pay podcasters in Bitcoin per second that I'm listening. It isn't sticking Bitcoin logos front and center everywhere or trying to tell me I need to buy Bitcoin immediately or any of that. Instead, it's just letting the user experience speak for itself. That's what we're trying to do. Make money boring, because when money works, it is boring because it's just a value exchange. What's more interesting is the interaction and the user experience. And that's what we're trying to enable here, is to enable developers to get started incredibly quickly and then pioneer new user experiences across entertainment and media using this fundamentally new payment rail. To then answer your question, it's like we want everyone to be able to do that. So the free tier is for everyone. Anyone can turn up and start building something. And we are a payment processor. We also provide a lot of regulatory and compliance guarantees around our infrastructure. And so to maintain that as you scale, it scales up with your usage. So the first sort of paid tier is about $50 a month. And we envisage that as being a pro developer who's building traction. And then it goes into the Premier tier, which is really designed for, SMEs who may push volume through e-commerce or through ad tech or through games, fintech, social applications, anything that could pick up, a large number of micro rewards. $500 a month should more than cover what you're doing. And anything beyond that, we can handle, but we sort of try and work out with you in a more bespoke way. And that's when you're going to encounter our sales team.
I'm curious about some of these micro reward possibilities. You mentioned e-commerce, so obviously with Fountain, you can send payments really easily to podcasters, but you can also receive small amounts of Bitcoin for listening to podcasts. It's pretty neat. I would recommend, if you're not listening to this podcast right now on Fountain, you give it a try, just test it out for yourself. But Ben, when it comes to e-commerce, maybe ad tech, some examples of these micro rewards that business owners could be thinking about for their own businesses, actually implementing after listening to this podcast.
Yeah, I'd rather focus in on the ad tech and rewards piece versus, say, e-commerce. So e-commerce is actually quite a bad example, because when you're buying something regularly, arguably you don't need a microtransaction. There's other alternatives are still potentially more viable, right? Including fiat. But when you're looking at, say, cashback or reward points, then it comes into it. And there's been businesses built around this, like Fold, in the Bitcoin space already, where the cashback rewards you're getting are given to you in Bitcoin. This is a huge industry, actually. Rewards are everywhere, not just in credit cards and debit cards, but also in, say, we discovered it through the world of gaming. If you buy a lot of games on Steam on your PC, you tend to get reward points back, which you can spend later to get discounted games. So what if those reward points were instant and, more importantly, instantly withdrawable? It's very common that rewards platforms give you the reward, but you've got to get to thresholds before they can process the transaction for you. And that's because of their own economics, right? If I give you $1 in cash back every time you spend your card, I've got to actually wait for you to get to something like $15, $20 before I'll let you use that, because to do the wire transfer is going to cost me money. We just get rid of that. And I think a very good example of that is a browser extension that partnered with us called Slice. What you can think of them as being just like Brave browser, where you are rewarded as you browse the web. You see, it is an ad block, but it lets through certain ads. And when you engage with those ads, you're paid. And you can withdraw your rewards in the form of either fiat through PayPal or Bitcoin. It was very interesting that when Slice launched, we looked at this with them. 87% of users chose Bitcoin, and they were not pushing Bitcoin ideologically. They were just saying lower fees and no minimums. And everyone let that speak for itself. And that's the kind of thing we think we specialize in, because if you look at, ad tech as an industry as well, it's often transaction based at a sub $5 level. It can get up to sort of $10, $15, but you're looking at, say, I'm going to buy some ad space. I'm going to pay 75 cents per impression. And, it's all going to get logged. And eventually I get an invoice, and that invoice is for $10,000 or something. And I'll pay it in one payment. Well, we can make it all real time with final settlement. And there's no chargebacks. It massively minimizes ad fraud. So that's a space we've actually found ourselves gaining significant traction in. Alongside that, you could look at, Fountain does rewards back to the users, which is really, podcasters or games where we started sharing their revenue back with the player in exchange for more engagement. And that works very well. I mean, that's really been our bread and butter. So yeah, I think, does that give you a clearer sense of the types of things you can do with this? That's a very simple example. We can also do, obviously, like peer-to-peer trade in virtual worlds and all sorts of abstract things. But I think at the simple level, being able to reward users for micro engagements is now more than possible on the internet.
And I guess the next thing is, there are probably going to be quite a few people listening to this podcast that aren't really comfortable as developers themselves. Probably some that are more in the Bitcoin space and have kind of come up through the techie side. They feel comfortable working with what you guys are offering as Zebedee. But for a business owner who just owns a local business, is this something that they would need a full-time developer to figure out how to implement it in their business? What should someone be thinking about when it comes to making the most of what you guys have to offer right now?
I wish I could give you the ideal answer and be like, no, it's all just click and drag and deliver. It's not
Sure.
quite at that level yet. It is as far as developer tools go, I feel confident in saying we're amongst the most comprehensive and easiest to get started with if you are even lightly technical. The way I would qualify that is, I'm not technical. I can't program, for example. I can go into a command line. So I can use Terminal or MS-DOS or whatever, people know that. And I can put in commands and do things. And I've been able to do that to the extent that I can run my own Bitcoin node and sort of start managing things there. If that gives your audience a good sense of sort of where my level is, I am capable of creating a project on Zebedee, an application. I then instantly have a Lightning wallet. I don't need to worry about liquidity or anything. I can deposit and send from it. And there's a playground I can use that Zebedee provides, where I can basically copy and paste some stuff and I can then trigger payments. So one of the first things I'm going to do is use it to set up my own vanity Lightning address. So, Ben at my domain or whatever. And that will actually just route to my Zebedee Lightning address. That's all it will do. It will just forward the payments on, but I get to show people a cooler Lightning address that I customized for myself. We'll be providing a guide on how to do that within a week. Santos, actually, who wrote it. So there's super simple things you can do that start at that kind of level. But this can scale all the way up to something much bigger. You could build Spotify with Bitcoin on top of our API. And that's the kind of thing we're trying to convey to people, is that really it's your imagination is where you can take this. So it might not be the best thing ever for a mom and pop shop. I mean, yes, you can now accept Bitcoin, if you're selling T-shirts or whatever. That's a very easy thing to do. But equally, you could think a lot bigger, and you could start thinking about building, finally you could do Uber with Bitcoin, or you could do TaskRabbit with Bitcoin, or you could do Fiverr. All of these platforms that exist around peer-to-peer transactions that are relatively small and need final settlement and address global audiences in a global market. All of those are now open season, in our opinion.
I want to go back to that deceptively simple idea that you had brought up at the very beginning of the podcast. Is this something that was always part of the game plan for Zebedee, or did these possibilities just become clearer over time? Because definitely you guys, had it locked down in the gaming space. Was this the natural next step that you'd always planned on, or did it just become apparent as you began to move forward as a company?
I'm always going to be a little bit coy about our strategy.
Okay.
I think the answer is yes, it was. don't want to talk about it too much, but I believe you have to prove product market fit in markets before you start expanding broadly. And I think you can corner markets and identify pockets where you build a moat that becomes very difficult to penetrate. I think there's a very grand risk with most payment businesses in the fintech space, even outside of crypto, of in being too generalized, they just couldn't pick up volume.
So then maybe the next thing for those businesses that aren't as techy, but really love the idea of incorporating Bitcoin and, being able to attract people to them and attract people into Bitcoin with different apps. Do you foresee a future where Zebedee is offering apps that people have created on some sort of store that Zebedee hosts, or is this really for people to come in and create something for their own business and then apply it back in their own business?
That is a very good question. So we built the ZBD app, and we differentiate between Zebedee for businesses and ZBD for normal folk. We built that because back in the day, in 2019, there weren't really any Lightning wallets that could be pushed to a normal user very quickly with minimal instruction. It's not to be critical of others. Like there was, like Wallet of Satoshi was out, and that was and still is a fantastic product. It was more from our perspective that we were dealing with games developers at the time who had no awareness of this market and needed trustworthy things from regulated, trustworthy companies, and weren't going to start pushing out products and applications to audiences where they didn't know who those teams were. So it was hard for us to turn up to a developer and say, hey, put Bitcoin in your game, and then tell them to install Phoenix from this company Async that you've never heard of. That was what the challenge was. They would be like, well, this is what, and they've got to write down these words. I don't like this. This is terrible UX. So we decided to quickly provide a Lightning wallet solution that would just be like, you can put the funds here and we'll tell the users to send them on in their own time. That turned out to be massively beneficial to us. And the consumer app is now one of our flagship products as well. So while we have a developer platform that is really what I'm here to speak about, we have a consumer application that is easily one of the largest or most popular Lightning wallets out there. And we do already push Lightning content to that user base. So if you open the Zebedee app, there are cards of apps and games powered by Zebedee that you can download from within the app, and they will just work out of the box. We have no issue actually listing other Lightning companies, even if they don't use Zebedee, because we believe in a rising tide lifts all boats. We want to see Lightning adopted. We also really don't mind if you don't want anything to do with the Zebedee ecosystem and all you want is the API and you want to build something for, a wholly different audience. Maybe you want, because we're quite like mainstream in our positioning, right? Maybe you want to build like the ultimate cypherpunk app or something, but you don't mind it being on custodial infrastructure for some reason. And then you go do that, and and you want to target that audience and you want it to be white label. You can do that. That's like, we're totally fine with that. We're compatible with Cash App. You can send all the users of your app to Cash App to cash out. They don't have to go through Zebedee. We're totally fine with all of that. We don't mind at all. But we have discovered in being in this market for as long as we have that most regular developers who aren't Bitcoin enthusiasts, who aren't in our world, they don't know where to look. And you can test this yourself, because if you go incognito mode and you don't use DuckDuckGo and you go to Google and you say, okay, top 10 Lightning wallets, that you get articles from 2021 from some clickbait link, and it links to wallets that don't even have Lightning. So how is anyone going to make sense, heads or tails of this ecosystem and really figure out, how do you discover, a reliable post on Stacker News when you're starting at the point in time where, when you think of Bitcoin, you think, I need to go and open a Coinbase account and then I'm going to stare at a price chart all day. You're not even at the place where like Bitcoin's an instant spendable, amazing form of internet money. That's not even where your head's at yet. So we've worked very hard to basically remove as many questions as possible and focus on the user experience. Get in, don't overthink it. You've got some Bitcoin now. You can learn what this is, or you can just cash it out straight away if you don't care. You might find out afterwards that you want to get more of that Bitcoin thing, but that's your own journey for your own time. The main thing we're enabling is huge cost savings to businesses who want to run their infrastructure on this, massive improvements in retention and user engagement, because it turns out people do actually like receiving rewards, even in the form of Bitcoin. And then for people who are into the Bitcoin space, you get the most compatible Lightning wallet out there. We support everything. We invented Lightning addresses, right, which is now what most of these wallets, depend upon, and what Nostr definitely depends upon. That came out of Zebedee. That was our CTO, Andre. So we're heavily focused on delivering the best UX we possibly can for Lightning and its ecosystem.
Well, Ben, hopefully for people who are listening, who have listened to this today, where Zebedee was maybe in the periphery, now you guys are much more in focus for business owners thinking about how they either can now or can in the future use you guys and work with you to encourage people to be more loyal customers in their own businesses. Before we finish up today, I'd love for you to share with people where they can go to find out more about Zebedee, maybe follow you if they're interested, and in as much as you can, let people know what they can expect from Zebedee in the future.
Sure. Yeah. Well, if you want to get started on Zebedee, you can go to our website, and that's zebedee.io. You should find all the guides and everything you need if you're technically minded there, as well as a bunch of information and case studies. If you want to download our app and just have some fun and earn some Bitcoin playing games and using apps, that's zbd.gg. You can go there and grab that. And I think it's really good fun. I spend an unhealthy amount of time there. You can follow me on Twitter at BitSpooky. And the last thing I'd say as it pertains to the future is we've made our first announcement of this month in announcing that we're opening up the API to anyone to build upon. We've got more coming, but we're going to be deliberately coy because we're quite excited. And we'd rather, maintain control of the messaging a little bit and let people see what it is that we've spent, the last 6 to 12 months working on.
Sure. Well, Ben, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Josh. Much appreciated.
Well, friends, it's a wrap. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Business Bitcoinization Show. If you want to reach out to either me or Ben, you can find our links down in the show notes. And if Zebedee's API seems like a great way for you to grow your business, check out that as well. As always, keep building, keep growing, and until next time, keep living and leading well.